My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you live on YouTube. Thank you for watching. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, and anyone interested in surviving as a Pilates instructor. I have you in mind if you're a new viewer, because I'm getting new friends on Facebook, and I'm trying to put myself in someone's shoes that is watching a Michael Miller Pilates live broadcast for their first time. So welcome, first of all, if you're new. If you're reaching across a language, thank you, and I wish I could speak in yours, but probably can't. And if you can understand me in mind, how valuable you are as a translator for this point of view into your own language. And in terms of surviving as a Pilates instructor, recognize how rarer you are if you actually grasp and understand and value and then seek to profit from sharing what you know. You know, that's what teaching Pilates is all about, and being paid for that. Not only is good to have payment coming towards you, but it's great karma to allow a student to pay you for the feeling of ownership that they get from whatever they feel they got for what they paid for. I know that sounds a little convoluted, but I think it makes sense. Right? You're not necessarily doing a student a favor by trying to make it cheaper or for free. Because you missed the opportunity for them to pay value for value as they equate the two. Be Christopher Columbus. So welcome, my new friends. With that in mind, what's important enough for me to tell you, well, I had the chance to. And the first thing I wrote down is that you can get this. If you're just tuning into MMP and CT and don't even know what those letters mean, if you're just turning in to Michael Miller Pilates, you can get this. It's not hard. It's not hard. It's very ideal, but it's something you can feel. And from the feeling, get a direct understanding of what you're doing. And so you can do this, and then my second comment on that is recognize that there's this carousel of learning. Now see, I want it to go left to right as you see the screen. But I don't know, in the screen as you see it, this is looking to your right, I'll bet. See? So follow me along with words. I know I said those backwards. Follow along with me in words and know the distinction between a carousel and a merry-go-round. Because the big difference to me is that a merry-go-round rotates clockwise if you look down on it from above, and from outside of it, it rotates from right to left as you watch it rotate, because it's rotating clockwise. A carousel rotates counterclockwise, and so if you're outside of the carousel watching it rotates from your left to right. Okay? And I choose the word carousel because being an English speaker and writing from left to right, the natural progression for me in writing, and therefore thinking, is left to right. But in a country where you wrote right to left, it may make more sense to tell your students to think about it as a merry-go-round, because it's sequentiality that matters, and it's the direction that you perceive it happening in as familiar. Because the point to the carousel of learning is that what goes by comes back around again. And when I assure you that you can get this, it's because all that's happening is the information is going by on a carousel. And at first it's just going by, and you might not even know it is a carousel, but when you start seeing familiar things, you realize, oh, there's repetition of what's going on, and I can relax, because what I missed the first time, I might pick up looking for it the second. And if not the second, then the third, and I can just sit back and watch it go around and become familiar with it at whatever level of attention I choose to give it. For the Pilates instructor, knowing that there's sequence and delivering flow and continuity to mirror that sequence, and to help you understand, if you're new, that this whole MMP thing, Michael Miller Pilates, and this whole thing about core new tension is not only understandable, but it's sensational, right? You can feel it, which is what makes it so great. All right, so moving on to number 3. I have what? I have 6 titles today, and I'm going to write them out because from broadcaster to broadcaster, when you broadcast, I think there's more momentum in what you have to say if you publish the list of what you're referring to in Facebook beforehand. And I've never done that in YouTube, because in YouTube it just goes to live, and it will be for a rainy day when I try to bring the titles that exist in Facebook over and insert them into YouTube comments. That make sense? So, number 3 with an exclamation mark is that it's not about you. Here you are, you're at least new to my view of Pilates, which is all this is. It's one view out of thousands, right? It's just a view of Pilates. And like many things, everyone has one. Every person has a view of Pilates. In this particular view of Pilates, MMP, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about you because within the perspective or the view of MMP, the Pilates instructor is there standing outside the cave of their students' sensations. You know, you're Yoda. You're new, you haven't heard this. And if you've heard this, surely you share this. Because it's so key to understanding the role of the Pilates instructor when it's not about the Pilates instructor. The Pilates instructor points into the cave and tells the student what to listen to, what to sense, what to pay attention to, what to concentrate on. And in having something that's sensational to concentrate on, be able to discern the sensation to a point of greater control than less, to take more control from the engagement. Number 4, it's not about, number 3 is it's not about you, and number 4 is understanding spirit. And see, this is where the crux of MMP comes in. So you're new and you're trying to get a point of distinction of how things are with MMP. Well, it's not about you in MMP because it's about your student having an experience, something that they can feel, that I would like to consider to be a complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit, right? Because from my point of view as a Pilates instructor, I'm seeking to help my client, my student, achieve complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit as an experience, as a state of being, those 3 capacities completely coordinated, as a state of being in the body in the moment of the doing. See, and it only can happen in the moment of the doing. It's not about all the great stuff that happens afterward and downstream from the moment. There's so much impact with what Pilates is about. It has a huge downstream impact. And so if you're new to Pilates and you're wrapped up in the tsunami of Pilates passion, in whatever stage that tsunami is in, whether it's old wave in the United States or a medium wave in Europe or such a fresh big wave in South America, with I don't think even much of a wave yet in Indonesia and China, just think. Just think how big this wave is going to grow. So, within MMP, if you're new to it or you're interested in it, what matters most, and what I have the opportunity to say to you before the wave just sweeps me away, like in 2012, say, the movie. Understanding spirit within MMP, spirit is observing. And observing as is viewed in quantum reality. Both generally the term quantum reality and specifically the book by Nick Herbert. So you don't have to know all the physics, but it does help to be able to point to a book. The best book right now that I can help you with that helps as bright a person as can be, I think, have a connection to what observing is in our experience and interpretation of our life, of the human experience. The simple statement is MMP, in MMP, spirit, as in body, mind, and spirit, is observing. And so if you're an instructor and you want to know what to make of that, well, observing is tough to come by. It's tough for me, the mind, to relinquish any of its ubiquity and exclusivity to having to listen to anything. It's why humans that are very mental in their being, or they're very strong in their expression of their capacity intellectually, are reluctant to even acknowledge, let alone invite, input that doesn't seem to be needed in order to do what it's already doing, which is thinking. See, so in one way of explaining this, or the way I look at it is, I don't care where the observing comes from, and the instructor doesn't need to as well. You don't need to know. It doesn't need to matter. As long as as an instructor, you know that your challenge is to help your student find the experience which is the target of the effort. And I know that doesn't say anything about actually what the effort is, but of course the effort is the performance of the mat, because it is a profound response to the physics in which we live. By demonstrating control in the most ideal manner available to the space in which it finds itself. Now that's pretty abstract, right? But just in general, and in the Pilates sequence, there's flexion and extension defining that plane. Right? Before you bend sideways, defining that plane. And that defines 3D space. It defines the space that at least we have to try to survive in, that matters most to us. 3D space, two planes, intersecting at 90 degrees. And all of that is an ideal I would say simulation in humanity's mind on what it's like out there, what reality's like. Within that 3D space, flexion and extension, side bending and rotation is patterned in that it evolves in complexity. And even though I think the impulse of life is an impulse of extension, when the target, what's the target of contrology, of Joe's method, is control, right? Then a hope of control is to counterbalance the opening into extension and move contrary to the extension in flexion, right? So in a workshop, in a group, you can stand up on a chair if you want to amplify standing up on a roof, and say, okay, if I fall off the roof, am I going to go arms out, legs out, and say, oh my gosh, I hope I'm going to be okay, right? Or do you pull in close to center and try to survive? So just look at how the body is comprised in terms of limbs and their orientations in space, and the emergence of the flexion being counterbalanced, of the extension being counterbalanced by flexion. And that can happen, and yet there can, see, so that's a shell, right? That can happen, and yet the rotation isn't even. And yet in a Nautilus shell, the ability to control rotation is symmetrical, which gives you much more control moving through space. Number 5, speaking the language of Pilates. In MMP, the word Pilates are more than exercises. Pilates is more than a group of exercises. Pilates is more than a dictionary of words, right? MMP is a grammar book that explains the syntax of the word that the words go in, And when you understand the grammar of the word, then you can actually speak a language. You don't make up the grammar, because the grammar is inherent in Joe's original work, in the sequence of his mat, and everything else that he took pictures of and wrote about. And there's a consistency throughout his original work, and the more you get to see of his original work, especially not sliced into little pieces, but seeing it in the bulk of how it was produced, you see the ideal within that. And in seeing the ideal and seeing the grammar within Joe's work, it does allow you what you're after, which is not only confidence, but gosh, authority from your understanding of the grammar that allows you to express your style as creatively and individually as you wish. Which is what I think we all do now anyway. All of it is we're all a creative smear from whatever we attribute to the word Pilates. The name thing becomes 10,000 things. So number 6, the snake twist comes from saw spine. So for me, a conventional mat sequence has saw in it, which is twist and flexion. Okay, so the saw on the mat is twist and is flexion, twisting. Okay, opposite prior, the spine stretch, which was just pure flexion, staying in plane in the body, like a ribbon. When you put that top of the ribbon in a twist, it becomes saw. When you hold the ribbon straight up, so you go from flexion to extension, because straight is an extension away from flexion, and make twist again, you repeat the nature of the pattern of the exercise, which is rotation, but you do it further away from center. And more ideally, because you're not just in flexion, even though the flexion hopefully is an ideal curve, you go to hold the extension of sitting up straight, doing spine twist, and the pattern makes itself apparent in those two exercises to me. And the later on in the mat work, where you go from side bend to twist 1 and then twist 2, twist 1 is bent at the hips, or in flexion making twist. And twist 2 is holding straight and making twist. You know what I'm saying? So saw and spine twist are the precursors to a duplication of the pattern further away from center with less contact in twist 1 and twist 2. Okay? So I'm talking about this, we talked about Pilates being the language, and there's a very concrete example of how the language is expansive in pattern and yet consistent in meaning. So loading would be a pattern that it started with near loading and the body not holding most of its weight to, and later on in the sequence, the body holding almost all of its weight, right? 2 contact points at extremities. So if you're just showing up, or you're a new friend, and I have yet to say this to my Facebook world, And I don't know if there's anybody out there but you, the one person that seems to follow along and watch at least some of this to an extent. On social media, I saw someone demonstrate the twist one and then side bend on the reformer, both on the reformer. Twist one and then the side bend on the reformer. Okay, and they were convenient in the doing of them, but demonstrated twisting before side bending, and that would be inconsistent with the pattern that's in Joe's original work, right? And in that I noticed that it wasn't in a pattern of flexion, extension, side bending, rotation, and torsion, that there was twisting being demonstrated and then side bending. See, why is that? And anything in Michael Miller Pilates, if you say why is that, somewhere there's an answer, because originally and throughout it all, the search has been for why is it what it is. And if you can come up with a better explanation of why, I want to hear it, because it changed my life and improve my perception of what's out there. For now, I have to go here and take some of my energy over to Facebook. On the way out, well, if you just showed up, what would I recommend? I recommend you memorize Joe's definition. So if you don't know that contrology is complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit, not the complete, just contrology is complete. Don't add the there or anything else anywhere. Just count the words in Joe's book and deliver that number of words. Know Joe's definition. Right after it, memorize Joe's words up to development, meaning contrology develops the body uniformly. There's more to that sentence. I wish he would have just put a period there and then continued, but it's enough just that he starts out there and says that for me in this point of view. And remember, it's just point of view. But in memorizing Joe's definition and in memorizing Joe's promise, and then the third thing is memorizing Joe's sequence, then you stand as close as Joe as you need to be to get anywhere else. So work on that. And to memorize the sequence, focus on the transitions. Pay attention and perform the transitions, because transitions kinetically and through cellular memory, right, weave the individual exercises together. And then the two things, in terms of you signed up to be a friend of Michael Miller Pilates, or me, and this whole thing is about my effort to support my licensed affiliates. They can use my trademark to educate the core new core, those people that could care less about Pilates but want to know or appreciates core new tension in the body. Because why? Two reasons why. It makes alignment sensational, and it triggers more uniform usage of the musculature. So memorize the definition of the ideal. That's the definition of Michael Miller Pilates, if you will, but it's an ideal view of Pilates. It's a theory. And just understanding that, see, there is no somebody that worked with somebody. This is, here's an idea, here's a theory, and you know, if it makes sense to you, run with it, being careful all along the way. And then the final thing, the two things from Michael Miller are the definition of the ideal of Pilates, and that's just a theory. It's an idea. There's a definition to the idea. It's the best I can do. It's 8 words. It's 8 words in 3 chunks. And to the extent that you just showed up and you're in love with Pilates and you're awash in the tsunami of Pilates passion, and there are all these ways to engage. And when you engage, you spend money, right? There's all these ways to engage. If you go aware of this particular point of view, it puts you in a distinctive position of having that point of view where so few do. And what you do with it and how you use your understanding of it will be part of your magic and your presence and your air of confidence and understanding. See? We talked yesterday too long about Pilates as a language, and when you know the language, you can speak and make meaning, and that it's like learning to swim, and once you know how to swim, you can swim anywhere, to any depth, and in any way. And I have to go and share that on Facebook. So thank you for being here, even though I think that here is long after I was. Life can't live forever. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Add 2 and 2. You don't, nobody will. Direct your thinking. And have fun. See, if it's not fun, why show up? Geist.